So we started raising Wagyu in the early 90s, and the cattle themselves were heavily criticized because folks that are in the cattle industry already look for bigger framed, bigger boned, bigger muscled cattle. And the Wagyu are more of a smaller framed, skinnier, so to speak, looking animal. They're not as impressive to a cattleman as some of the other continental breeds. And so it was a really hard sell in the 90s to convince anyone that Wagyu was worth investing in. But my family really believed in the outcome of the product and the high marbling that these cattle produce. Also, there's calving ease that the Wagyu are known for, and they're just a great breed of cattle. So that's how we got into the business. And so we've been raising Wagyu, only Wagyu cattle for the last 35 years.
So I want to dive into that direct to consumer aspect a little more, just because that is becoming so much more popular today, whether that's becoming an additional revenue source to bring the next generation back, or even for existing generations, or fulfilling, like you said, because you get to connect with the consumer. I'm curious, with your market, why are they primarily attracted to your product?
I think the word Wagyu has a lot of mystery to it. Not everyone has had the chance to try Wagyu beef. And I'm never going to be the person that says Wagyu is better than all other beef. That's not the case. I don't believe that to be the case. I think Wagyu and beef is similar to the wine industry or the cheese industry, where people have different taste preferences, and you can't really say one is better than the other, but the Wagyu does have a very high propensity to marble. And so we're looking at, the beef we produce is not just prime, it's beyond prime. It is an incredibly marbled beef. It's got good ribeye size, it's got really good flavor, and the fat content is a little bit different than conventional beef. And so, some folks will tout its healthy fat contributions, and while that's the case, there is more fat in the beef, so you're probably eating it at a smaller quantity size. But folks are coming and reaching out to us about our Wagyu beef because it is a prime product. It is a beyond prime product, and it does have an incredible taste behind it. Not only that, though, I think there's the element of folks know where their beef is coming from. And that's the case for any of us doing direct to consumer. So we always, not only do we sell the beef to folks, but we tell them, if you ever want to stop by the ranch, you're welcome to. We want to bridge that gap between producer and consumer. And so I think people, in addition to it being a Wagyu product and a high marbled product with great taste, it's also knowing where their beef comes from and wanting to support local.
So with Wagyu, what would you say are maybe some of the common misconceptions either some of your customers have maybe brought up to you that you've had to clear up, or maybe even other cattle producers have had with you in conversation that you've had to clear up?
I can start with the beef side of things. I think there's a general misconception that Wagyu only comes from Japan, and it's not real Wagyu unless it's from Japan. And Wagyu came from Japan, yes. Wagyu literally means Japanese cow, but those cattle were imported here, and we DNA parent verify every single animal for registration back all their lineage to Japan. And so that's a common misconception. A lot of people think, well, it's not real Wagyu. And the way we feed out and grow our Wagyu in the US is different than Japan, just like it's different throughout the world in the cattle industry. And so when people think A5 Japanese Wagyu beef, they're thinking the most marbled steak you've ever seen. And typically our American style Wagyu is a crossbred product, or if it's a purebred or full blood product, it'll be more heavily marbled, but it's pretty tough to get that same level of marbling to the Japanese A5. And that comes down to feed length on feed, age the animal's processed, type of husbandry practices, things like that. So there are some differences, but it doesn't mean that what we're raising is not real Wagyu, because it is. I would say there's a lot of confusion with labels and understanding what Wagyu really means in the American marketplace. So probably 95% of what Wagyu beef is marketed as in the US, it's a crossbred product. So half Wagyu, half Angus, half Holstein. There's a lot of beef on dairy that Wagyu is used for. And so the majority of the beef here is a crossbred product with Wagyu. It's a great product, an amazing product, but there's confusion around that, because then there are smaller producers like us and others who we might produce a crossbred product from time to time, but we also raise 100% full blood Wagyu or a purebred, which in the breed of Wagyu, purebred doesn't mean 100% like other breeds. We say full blood for 100%. And then purebred is a 15/16th cross, which is 93.75% and higher. So there's some different categories in the Wagyu industry that is really confusing to the consumer, and that makes it difficult too. And what we try and do is just educate and be transparent with what we're selling. If we're selling a F1 Wagyu Angus cross, we'll advertise it as such. If we're selling a 100% full blood Wagyu, it'll come at a more premium price, but there's so much education that goes into that, unfortunately.
But what a great opportunity to connect and share more about the story too within that education. It'd just be unfortunate if consumers were misled by others before that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's that consumer standpoint. And then there's the second category of cattle producers and what folks in the industry think about Wagyu. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions that Wagyu, while they might not look as robust and muscular as a lot of our conventional cattle do, there's a misconception that they're weak, they're frail, they're sickly, they're not good moms, they're wild, they're crazy. And I'm just here to say that that's not the case. And I think it comes down to your animal husbandry practices, your operation, the way you work cattle. We really, our focus on our ranch is low stress animal handling, and that's worked out really well. Now, it doesn't mean you're not going to come across some high-headed animals and have to make decisions on whether you keep those or not. The Wagyu, we've raised our Wagyu like a commercial operation. We will run them in 2 to 3,000 acres along the breaks of the Snake River canyons in eastern Washington, and that's really tough terrain. About 2,000 feet elevation difference that they're, going up and down. And they actually have to calve on their own. We calve in the fall and the spring, completely unassisted, and they have to bring a calf in at weaning. And if they don't, they get 2 chances, and then we cull them or they go into our meat program. And so running the Wagyu like a commercial operation, I think that says a lot about the resiliency of these cattle. We have tough winters, we have tough summers, and we really expect a lot out of them. And so as we've built our herd up over the last 35 years, I think there's been a bit of natural selection that's helped us develop a line and herd of Wagyu that are more resilient. But I often hear, oh, those Wagyus, they're just, they die all the time, or they're sickly, or the moms don't take care of the calves. And while that might be true with certain lines and certain types of cattle in general, you have to make selection based on good cattle traits. And one of the main things we expect of our cattle is to take care of a calf and to have it on its own.
I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, each breed definitely has its own strengths and weaknesses overall, but like you said, it's how producers are selecting for what they're keeping and culling. I mean, with any breed, you can get some that are high-headed. With any breed, you can get some that aren't good moms. I mean, it just depends. So everything has their strengths and weaknesses, but there are good ones and bad ones in each breed as well.
Exactly.
So what advice would you give to other ranchers if they were considering getting into this breed and making that transition? What are some questions they should ask themselves, or maybe some things they need to consider to make sure that they are prepared for that transition?
I think it comes down to understanding that the cattle industry as a whole is not a get rich quick business model. It's a long game, and if played right and done right, it could be very rewarding. But at the end of the day, most of us love what we do, but we're also trying to run a business, and we have to remain profitable and sustainable to keep doing what we're doing as a family. And so just knowing that, like anything else, you can't get in quickly and often make a lot of money right away. It's something that takes time, whether you're going the genetics route or the beef route. As you know, by the time you breed a cow and the gestation, the calf is born, the calf is raised, how long it's on feed, it takes a couple years to get on a plate and to bring that return on investment. And so understanding those metrics, and like you said, there's pros and cons to all breeds. While the Wagyu have amazing advantages for their marbling and their carcass traits, and calving ease, they do require being fed out longer than conventional cattle. And so when we're talking feed times, if it's a Wagyu cross animal, a lot of folks are feeding out from 25 to 30 months of age. And so that's a lot of time they're invested in feed and in that animal before you get a return. When we're looking at a higher percentage Wagyu animal, we're looking at even over 30 months, 30 to 36 months even, feeding out those animals. So that's a lot of time to wait for money to come back. So you have to be smart in how you make those investments. And for folks starting out, growing slowly is the best way to go.
Folks, if you want the full scoop on this conversation, be sure to listen to the full podcast episode on casual cattle conversations. You can find that on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and frankly, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. With that, happy ranching, folks.